Good morning. We are live across a whole bunch of different platforms. Gotta love technology these days. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Morning. I'm gonna wait for some people to trickle in here and we will get started. Good morning. Welcome, everybody. Can somebody, would you guys mind chatting or putting in the chat box where you're from and who you are? Because right now I'm on StreamYard and I want to make sure that your questions are coming in later. So if you just post in the chat box, just say hi, let me know where you're tuning in from. That would be awesome. And hopefully it shows up here. I am brand new to this StreamYard. I do most of my stuff on Zoom and I finally figured that out. As soon as you figure something out, they give you something new to learn. So hopefully I can see your comments. We're having trouble streaming to LinkedIn. This may be an issue on LinkedIn's end. Okay, that came in from LinkedIn, I presume. But in any case, I'd love if you could type where you're from, who you are. I'm not seeing it right now on StreamYard, but let me just see here. One second here. I'm trying to figure out how to remove the comment from that LinkedIn just sent. We are going to get this technology working here. Oh, there we go. Now I'm seeing some people here. Hello, Waterloo. Hey, Jordan. Good to see you. Good to see you guys here. I'm going to get started here in just let's give it one more minute. And I'm going to respect your time. And if people show up late, they show up late. But we're going to get the show on the road here in 1 minute. So good to have you here all the way from Waterloo. Right now I'm broadcasting from Los Cabos, Mexico, and I kind of jumped ship on Canada around the end of October. For those of you who don't know me that well, I'm normally a nomad and I travel pretty much full time. And of course, when COVID hit, it sent me back to Canada. Spent around 7 months in Canada, and I was okay till the snow started to fly. And once that happened, then I decided, I don't think I'm going to make it through winter. I haven't done winter in around 7 years or so. I didn't think I was going to be able to make it. And so I came down to Los Cabos, and I've been traveling around California. Yes, my favorite place to invest. We'll talk about that. So I came down to Cabo, and now I've been traveling around Mexico ever since. I've been hanging out in Puerto Vallarta and Playa del Carmen and Cancun, Tulum, and just really enjoying this country a lot. But I am missing my grandkids back home in Canada, so I hope to get there hopefully soon. Sounds like things are starting to loosen up a little bit in Canada, so who knows? Maybe I'll be able to get back there soon. All right, so welcome everybody. I am going to get started, and people will trickle in when they trickle in, but I want to respect your time, and I appreciate you being here on time. So this is a time of year when there's certain times of year where we tend to think back on certain things and look back. Sometimes it's our birthdays. New Year's obviously is a big one. And one of them for me on top of those two is the beginning of July, because beginning of July in Canada, it's Canada Day. For my American friends, it is 4th of July, of course. But also it signifies the middle of the year. And it's pretty much right dead center in the year. And usually after the festivities of Canada Day and July 4th, and I celebrate both because I spend a lot of time in the US too, and that's where I do most of my investing. But after those festivities are over, I usually figure out, well, where am I? How are we doing so far in the year? It's halfway. Have we met our goals? And what do we want to do to finish the year strong? What do we want to do maybe differently to make 2021 the best year ever, as weird as that sounds in the middle of a pandemic? And so my team said, well, why don't you do an event for your people? And they were going to charge $97. And originally that was the plan. And then I decided, you know what, there's a lot of people still struggling. So I decided I'm just going to make it free. And anybody who happens to see, hey, good to see you, Ben. And so for people that happen to see us on any of the different places we're streaming right now, I want to add as much value as possible and answer as many questions as possible, because I know a lot of you are not real estate investors yet, or maybe you've thought about it, but you haven't done it, or maybe you've done one deal, or maybe you just own your principal residence and seen it go up tremendously over this past year and a half. And you're thinking, well, what if I had 3 or 4 homes instead of 1? Next time this happens, hopefully not a pandemic to make the market go crazy. Hopefully something more positive making it go crazy. And so I decided to take today and answer as many questions as possible, kind of give you some direction and also hopefully some inspiration, and show you what some of the things that I'm looking to do and some of the things I recommend that you maybe look at doing as well, depending on what your desire is within real estate. So maybe, like I said, some of you have never maybe done a deal in your life, and you're seeing a lot of people making a lot of money in this space, and you've always wondered how they did it. Maybe some of you lost your job in the last little bit, or your business shut down. I get a lot of calls from people that have gone through a lot of stuff, a lot of transition since COVID started. A lot of my friends that were doing very well pre-COVID, their businesses unfortunately didn't make it. And so I seem to be the person that people, for whatever reason, they come to me, not just with real estate questions, but just, I don't know, I seem to be the rock that people kind of rely on. I guess it's because I'm always positive no matter what. And anyway, so for whatever reason, they come to me, and I decided, you know what, I want to help as many people as possible. Good to see you, Phil. And just really give you some direction. If you're kind of lost, you don't know what to do next, or maybe you've always thought about real estate investing and you've been waiting for the right time. Well, I can tell you right now, what's coming up is going to be probably the biggest transfer of wealth in history. There's going to be the most opportunity within real estate, and certainly the 31 years I've been doing it. And I am very, very optimistic for what's ahead. So let's start off. And by the way, you guys can put questions at any time in the chat box. Feel free to interrupt me. I don't, like on Zoom, I know that you can raise your hand and stuff. I don't know how to do that all here on StreamYard. I do have Phil here. I know he knows a lot about StreamYard. So maybe, anyway, feel free to put messages in the chat box though, because luckily they are showing up for me, and I'm happy to answer your questions. So feel free to jump in anytime. And this is really about you guys. It's not about me. I want to make this as meaningful to you as possible. And I also want to, for those of you who don't really know me that well, I want to talk to you sort of where I started, how I got into real estate in the first place. And because I find that might inspire some of you. A lot of people, when you see somebody who's successful at whatever it is that they do, it's very easy to think, oh, well, that person was born to do that. Or of course, he's lucky, or he came out with this of the womb with a special gift on how to invest in real estate. And so I want to just show you that nothing can be further from the truth. So if we go way back, middle of grade 12, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up. And my parents were always telling me that I should be a doctor or lawyer. And I'm terrified of blood, so doctor was never going to happen, ever. That was never an option. But I remember seeing those shows on TV with, you'd see the lawyers, and they always have these fancy offices. And I thought, that looks kind of cool, looks kind of glamorous. I think I could do that. And so I went and got my first degree. And by the time I got that first degree, I had racked up a whole lot of student loan debt. And I'm sure some of you can relate. And I really did not want to go back at the second degree and have a whole bunch more debt. And so I decided to get it paid off. And a good buddy of mine, his mother was a manager at the phone company. And back in those days, it was union, and it was government run. It paid very, very well. And so I got a job there. My goal initially was, okay, I'll work here for a year or two, pay off the student loans, and then go back and get my next degree. Well, while I was there, I managed to get my credit to a certain place, and ended up buying my very first property. And I had to be very creative, by the way, because I didn't have a down payment. So luckily I had a very creative mortgage broker who showed me a legal way to put the deal together with no money of my own, and which we'll talk about later, because I know a lot of you are thinking, oh, I'd love to get into real estate. This is possible great opportunity that Mike's talking about, but I don't have a whole lot of cash. So I get people all the time that call me up and say, Mike, I don't have any money. I'd love to get into real estate. I just don't have any money right now. And I say, oh, you have zero? You're lucky, because when I started, I was negative 25,000 in student loan debt, aspiring. My aspirations were to get to zero. And so that was my big goal back then. But anyway, so I bought my first property to live in while I was working at the phone company. And shortly after I bought it, my very creative mortgage broker calls me up and goes, Mike, if you want, I could get you another mortgage if you wanted to buy a second property. And back in those days, I remember thinking, second property, why would I want a second property? That seemed like such a weird, that seemed like the weirdest thing I'd ever heard at that time. It's like, why? I'm one person. I don't have a family. At that point, I had no family. It was just me. Why do I want a second property? And he said, well, you buy it, you put a tenant in there, they're going to pay your mortgage for you. And in 25 years from now, that property will be paid off, and that's your retirement plan. And I thought, well, that kind of makes a lot of sense. And so I remember, of course, I knew nothing about real estate investing at that point. And so the only due diligence that I knew back in those days was I wanted to find a pretty home, and I wanted to be close to where I lived so that I could go collect the rent easily at the end of the month. Don't ever do that. That is not your due diligence. Those are not your due diligence steps, by the way. But that's what I did. I found a pretty home close to where I lived. And shortly after I bought it, shortly meaning a couple of years, it wasn't like the next day, a couple of years after I bought it, I was still working at the phone company, by the way. And I remember watching house prices go crazy in Calgary, where I'm from. And I remember at one point, I looked at how much equity I had in these homes, my principal residence and this rental property that I owned, and thinking, man, in the last 2 years, I made this much at the phone company. I didn't love working there. I didn't mind it. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. I made this much at the phone company, thinking I made this much in real estate. And I don't even know what I'm doing in real estate. I mean, my due diligence, like I said, was just picking a pretty home. And I thought, if I can make more money doing real estate without even having a clue what the heck I'm doing, what would happen if I actually learned how to do it properly? And so I did what most, back then I was in my mid 20s. I think I know that my ego got the best of me, and I thought I knew everything there was to know about real estate. And I thought, okay, this is the first time in my life where I actually have something that I enjoy doing. I'm not living my parents' goal for me to be a lawyer. I'm actually doing something that I find interesting, I find exciting, I feel inspired to do. And so I promptly, and don't do this, once again, don't do what I did. I quit my job at the phone company almost immediately. I burnt that bridge because I thought, hey, I'm never going to have to rely on somebody else for money. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And more importantly, I actually told my parents, especially my mother, I told her that she kept bugging me, Mike, you got to go get that second degree. When I started to tell her about real estate and how that was my new passion and how I was going to just go crush it in the real estate world, she said, Mike, get your second degree so you have something to fall back on. And then if you want to do real estate, do real estate. But I said, Mom, don't worry, I got this. I don't need that second degree. And the reason that was really significant is shortly after I quit my job and told my mom I know everything about real estate, I thought I'm going to duplicate what I did. But now, of course, I didn't have those paychecks coming in every 2 weeks from the phone company. And I realized, hey, I can't wait 2 years for my next paycheck. So I thought, well, I've heard about people doing flipping homes. Remember, that first home was meant to be a 25-year hold. So anyway, I thought I'll start flipping homes. And my next deal, I once again looked for a pretty home close to where I lived. I didn't really know very much about any kind of flipping strategy, and managed to lose almost all of what I had made on my previous deal. So I remember it seemed like every time the contractors would go over there, they'd find something else wrong with a home. I never bothered to have it inspected. I just brought a buddy of mine who took a quick look at it with me and said, yeah, looks pretty decent. So anyway, every time I turned around, I got another bill. There's a problem with the plumbing. There's a problem with the electrical. That home went way over time, way over budget. And I managed to lose a lot of the capital that I had earned from my previous deal. And now I was realizing that real estate is, one, it's not get rich quick. Two, you can't take, like I happened to get really lucky on that first deal. It had nothing to do with me being smart, had nothing to do with me having a good strategy, had nothing to do with anything other than the fact I had really lucky timing in the market. And just like winning the lottery, you might win the lottery once. And by the way, most people win the lottery, end up burning through that money very quick, and then they've got nothing. But you can't duplicate it. It's one thing to have a success in real estate. It's another thing to be able to duplicate it over and over and over again. And so the reason I told you about my mother is because at this point, when I took that really big hit, I could not go to her and say, Mom, you're right. I need to go back to school. I couldn't do it. Just wasn't, especially in my mid-20s. I'm in my mid-50s now. Now I actually will tell my mom she's right. When I was in my mid-20s, I would never tell my mom she was right. And so I knew I needed to figure it out. And so after I made a very, very expensive mistake, I took what little money I had left and I basically hired a mentor. And basically I found somebody who was doing the things that I needed to learn how to do, to, in this case, flip homes. And I wish I could say the rest was history and everything was smooth after that, but certainly things were a lot better and a lot less failures. But the reason I tell you all this story is because, one, I never even had a desire to do real estate until I got that first big paycheck. And then I became passionate about it. And number two is I certainly did not come out of the womb an expert in real estate. I knew nothing about real estate. And the first time I ever had an inkling that I wanted to do this as for a living was after I had that nice big paycheck in my hands, which I managed to lose most of. And so for those of you who are taking time on a Saturday to tune in, take time out of your busy day to hang out with me for however long we go today. And I have a tendency to go for long, long days. I hope you stick here with me. But you're taking the time to actually invest the time to actually learn about this stuff. I didn't take the time. I just had that. Sometimes having a really big success early on is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it gave me some capital to play with. On the other hand, I got to the point where I just was a know-it-all. And one of the things that I teach my students these days, don't be a know-it-all, be a learn-it-all. And if it weren't for COVID, quite often you will find me still learning my craft. I go to a lot of seminars. I go to a lot of events. Some of the people in this room I've met at events. I know that I met Phil at an event that I got to speak at in Portugal. Ben we've met at events. So a lot of my best friends are people that I've met going to seminars, and I'm always learning. And so I just want to commend all of you for being here, and instead of being know-it-alls, being learn-it-alls. And that makes all the difference, having that right mindset where you're open, you're coachable, and willing to learn from other people's mistakes and their successes. But I always like to talk about my failures, because a lot of gurus, they like to talk about all the things that went right and how they made their money and got rich. And that's awesome, but they very rarely share where they screwed up. And I think there's a lot of value in knowing where those landmines are and where you can mess up. And so I'm going to talk about some successes for sure. I'm going to talk about some failures, and I'm going to talk about some of the stuff that I'd be doing right now. If I could go back in time 31 years ago and talk to my mid-20s self, I'm going to teach you the things that I would teach myself, and the things I'm actually going to be teaching my grandkids. I have two grandkids. One is 5 and one is 2. And I miss them a lot because they're up in Canada. I've been in Mexico now since October. But these are the things that I actually will teach my family. And one of the things that I've already started teaching them, even at a very young age. Everybody else, when I was growing up, everybody said, "Yeah, you got to go work hard. Go work hard." I had that it was in my subconscious. My parents just drove that into my head, especially my mother. My mother got divorced when I was 2. She remarried when I was 7. But my biological dad, he never really supported the family. He just was never in the picture. And my mother wanted to make sure I didn't turn out to be like that. And so she was always saying, "Mike, you got to go work hard. You're the guy. You've got to go support your family." And so I really took that to heart. And I know she meant well by it, but that's not what I'm teaching my grandkids. I'm teaching them to work smart, not hard. But I really took it to heart. And there was a point in my career where I was a workaholic and working 12 and 14-hour days. So that's not what I would wish upon any of my students or any of the people that I coach or mentor. And so I'm going to teach you today not only what the best strategies are, but how you can do it without having to work 12, 14-hour days. I don't think that really serves anybody. And a lot of people that are workaholics, and like I said, I'm a recovered workaholic turned playaholic now. But a lot of workaholics, they wear it as a badge of honor. Hey, it's like, I work 12-hour days, but I love it. Well, that's great. I mean, it's great I think working hard is something that's been handed down from generation to generation. And I think people taught us that because it's a lot better than maybe sitting on the sofa all day watching Netflix, eating Doritos. However, there is a better way. When you look at the most successful people, they all learned how to work smart. They learned how to use leverage, other people's time, other people's resources, And they're not on the front lines being workaholics. The most successful, like here in Cabo, when I go to the marina, the people on yachts are not people that are saying, oh, well, we've got to park the yacht now because I got to go put in 12 hours today of work. They're not doing that. And so I'm going to talk to you about some of the things that I've done to transition from that workaholic to playaholic over the years. Didn't happen overnight, but once again, I really want to, I hate, in the olden days, all my trainings were all about money, money, money. Here's how you make more money. Here's how you make more money. And certainly money is extremely important. So we're not going to discount the need for money. We absolutely all need that. But I think there's also another piece of the equation, and it's getting that money to come in passively and on autopilot, and to make it so you don't even have to worry about money. Like I like to think of money a lot like oxygen. I'm never thinking, oh, I hope Jordan isn't breathing too much right now because there won't be enough oxygen for me. None of us ever think of that. And yet oxygen is the most important thing that we have, but we rarely think about it because it's so abundant. And so one of the things I love to teach people is how to make your money abundant, so you don't even think about it anymore. You're not worried about it. You're not chasing it anymore. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. And because to me, teaching people how to make money, but not teaching them about having balance in life. If you've got lots of money and you don't have your health, or you have lots of money and your relationships are all falling apart, that doesn't really serve you. Having money in your bank is one piece of the equation, but I think if you don't have that balance, you're really missing out. And actually, I did in January, I did a TED Talk, and that was my topic. It was all about happiness and fulfillment. And to me, that's, we measure our money every day because we've got a bank account. We can see very quickly how much money we've got sitting in our bank account, but we don't have a special meter that measures our happiness. That's something that we feel internally. We don't have a special meter or account where we can measure our fulfillment. And to me, those are the most important things. Once you get the money part figured out, then you've got the freedom. And once you've got the freedom, now we need to figure out, well, what lights you up? Because we see a lot of very wealthy people that are miserable. I know I won't name any names, but I know a lot of people right now, a lot of my friends. I've got one buddy of mine, he's a very, very successful home flipper. But if I ever go visit him, if I say, hey, let's go for a coffee, he can't do it. It's like, no, Mike, why don't you hop in my car with me and we'll drive around. And I've got to have a conversation while we're driving around looking at his properties, and he's checking up on his teams. So that's not what I want to help any of you create. I want to help you create some freedom and abundance, so that the reason we get into real estate in the first place is to have this freedom to do the things that we like to do, and the things that are important to us, like hanging out with our families. If travel is important to you, awesome. If volunteering, giving back is important. Whatever it is for you, that's what real estate can provide if you do it properly. And so we're also going to talk about that. So I just wanted to put some of those concepts out there early on, because this is not just all about money. We're going to talk a little bit about mindset, delegation, or basically we're going to go in whatever direction that you lead me by your questions and comments. And so I hope I'm getting all your anything that you post. I do see some things showing up in the chat box. I know we're on a whole bunch of different platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram, where else? YouTube Live. So I don't know if all of them are posting in here. So if it seems like I'm ignoring you, I'm not doing it on purpose. I'm very new to this technology. But anyway, let's dig in. So where are we? Here we are. It's July 2021. We are hopefully at the tail end of COVID. Hopefully. Things seem to change on a day-to-day basis, so we never know where we're at. But when COVID first hit, I remember I was actually on a flight. I was flying from, where was I? I was going from Washington, D.C. to L.A. And I had just gone to a wedding in D.C. I was getting ready to speak at an event in L.A. The event had already been canceled. It wasn't going to happen live anymore, but I already had the flight. And so I was on my way there. And I remember watching on the TV on the flight that Los Angeles was being shut down. I think that was the first American city that got shut down from COVID. And I was thinking to myself, you know what? When I land in LA, I'm not going to stay there if it's shut down. I got to be locked up in a hotel. I don't even cook for myself. So all the restaurants were shut down. I'd probably die of starvation. Who knows what's going to happen? I knew I wasn't going to stay there. And originally I was thinking, well, if I did have to get stuck somewhere, where do I want to get stuck? And initially I was thinking, well, maybe I'll just go to Hawaii. At that time, everything was open. And I thought, well, you know what, if they did that to LA, they could just as easily shut down the Hawaiian Islands. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to go back to Canada. That's where my daughter is. That's where my 2 grandsons are. And I thought that's probably the best place for me to be. And I remember when I got there, you know, my calendar was like empty. I had no speaking engagements, no flights, no nothing. Everything was canceled. And when I first got back, I spent the first 2 weeks doing what most people were doing. And I was watching Netflix and I was sleeping in every day. And it was very weird because it's been a long time since I had that kind of schedule where I was actually just staying put in one place. It didn't have to be anywhere. But probably 2 weeks into that, I started to get a lot of phone calls from my friends saying, "Hey, Mike, my business just shut down. Mike, I just lost my job." And people started to come to me with a lot of their started off with financial problems. Then it grew from there, from people just saying, "Hey, I don't feel good. Anyway, I had a lot of people starting to call me, and I realized that there were a lot of people that were going to be in trouble from this global lockdown. And you can't really shut down the global economy and not expect there to be a big fallout from that. And so I decided, you know what, this pandemic, even though on the one hand, obviously there's a whole lot of negative things surrounding it, the one positive thing, at least for me, and I know some other people too, it gave me the bandwidth, it gave me the extra time in my schedule where I could do the things that I should have done a long time ago. And I've been thinking for many years, you know what, I should record some of my best stuff, one so I can pass on to my daughter and grandkids, but also to help a whole bunch of other people. But I never actually found the time to do that prior to COVID. I would shoot a video here and there, and you guys have probably seen, some of you have maybe seen some of my videos, especially on YouTube. But they're 2 and 3 minute videos. I can only give you so much information in a 2-minute video. And so it gave me the bandwidth to, you know, I saw all these friends of mine in trouble, and I thought, you know, instead of me talking to them one-on-one and teaching them how to do this, why don't I start putting on do some live streams over Zoom? And I learned how to use Zoom finally, which I should have done years earlier. But in any case, that was kind of the start of, for the first time ever, me creating programs that I used to do live events, and somebody's asking about my tax deed training. I'll talk about that in just a bit. But it gave me the bandwidth to now go and share my knowledge with more people. And so started off, I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'll do a 3-day event. I'll share my best stuff, we'll record it, and then anybody who couldn't be there live for those 3 days, we can either give them or sell them the recordings. And that was the initial plan. Anyway, that initial plan ended up leading me to doing 4 3-day events in just under a year. Did 4 3-day events, and I just realized how many people were going through so much turmoil and so much stress. And so after my last event, between event 3 and 4, I got asked to do that TED Talk. And so it was I'm not used to working that many hours. So I'm the person who teaches you not to work hard. But in 2020, I actually worked pretty hard. And so I actually took a break. I was going to do another 3-day event in September. And I've decided I'm probably not going to do that. But I decided occasionally I'm going to come online like I am today and answer all your questions, give you some direction, let you know what's happening in the market at that time. And that's something I can commit to very easily because I can do it from anywhere. And these 3-day events are a lot of work, as some of you know. I know Ben knows that. He just did one of his 3-day events. So here we are, and we're at hopefully the tail end of this pandemic. And what we've seen so far since the pandemic started is a massive shortage of properties in markets, especially all over North America. We're seeing massive shortages, and we're seeing people fighting over them because now, in addition to a shortage of properties, we also have record low interest rates. And so a lot of people are thinking, well, if I don't buy a home now, these interest rates are never going to be like this again, most likely in our lifetime. And so we have a whole bunch of people trying to find properties. We have a very small percentage of people that want to sell properties, and certainly have people walking through their homes, etc. And it's created a really interesting and counterintuitive market. And counterintuitive because if somebody would have said to me 2 years ago, hey, there's going to be a pandemic, what's going to happen to real estate, my first gut instinct would be say, oh, we're going to see things tank. People are going to be desperate for money and nobody's going to be buying. But the governments have put a lot of different things in place to keep the economy afloat and to make it so that people aren't being homeless on the streets. I don't know how effective that is because they're not really they are giving stimulus checks. It's not for huge amounts of money, but it's creating some interesting ripple effects. We're seeing some very unusual activities in a lot of the markets, and some of them have gone actually ridiculous. And the prices are insane. Now, what we're likely to see, especially in the US, it's already starting to happen. I believe they were going to stop right now there's a foreclosure moratorium. I think it was supposed to end at the end of June. I think it got extended until September, but that's not going to last forever. And these stimulus checks in both Canada and the US, that's not going to last forever. And we're going to see a lot more people, unfortunately, in trouble. And I'm already starting to see that. I'm starting to get calls from people that are behind on their payments, both with their mortgages and other things. And there's going to be a big shift in the market. What we're likely to see is what I'm predicting to be one of the biggest transfers, if not the biggest transfer of wealth in history. Now, transfer of wealth, a lot of people think, oh, well, the rich are going to get richer and the poor are going to get poorer. And in a lot of ways, that's the opposite. Let me give you an example. Imagine pre-COVID, you owned a big office building in Midtown Manhattan. 2 years ago, that would have been a very enviable position, having office space right in the middle of Manhattan. It's very valuable real estate. Well, now, post-COVID, a lot of the people that you had maybe paying you rent to be in that building are probably no longer paying rent. Maybe they're no longer there. And so we're seeing very wealthy people who spent a lot of time building up their businesses. We're seeing them taking a very big hit, a very big haircut. And we're also seeing people that maybe have never had much luck financially. They're in a position, if they had the right information, and that's why I'm here, if you had the right information to take advantage of what's coming down the pipeline, you could absolutely, totally change your financial picture forever. And I can tell you that 2020 for me, financially was the best year I've ever had. I was doing well pre-COVID, but it just took it to a whole new level because it gave me, once again, the bandwidth to create more materials and content. I'm sold out. For those of you who follow me, you know that I sell, one of the things I do, I have a business where I sell turnkey properties in Atlanta, Georgia. I literally, just the other day, I had somebody buy all my remaining inventory. I've got nothing. I've got 0 properties to sell right now. And so this could be, and the reason I'm saying this isn't to brag or show off, it's just that this could be you as well. There's no reason, anything that I'm doing, I'm just a little bit ahead on the journey than you are. But the advantage you have is you guys are smart. You're actually learning from somebody else. When I first started, like I said, I was just trying to wing it and figure it out as I went. And I made some very, very costly mistakes, and I didn't know where the gold was. And so I'm going to tell you where the gold is as we progress through today. I'm just going to answer a couple of the questions. So simple but efficient. What country do you like to, I'm not sure if that's supposed to mean country or county. So my favorite country to invest in is the United States. My favorite counties, it really depends on what strategy that you're going to use. It's so important. So if you're going to be buying properties to hold, you're going to have a much different way of analyzing a deal than if you're looking to flip a property, for example, or wholesale a property. If you don't understand some of the terminology, you will by the time we're done, because I'm going to go in a lot more detail on some of these strategies that I'm mentioning. If I was going to do tax deeds, I love, Adrian asked, are you going to do tax deed classes here? I am hoping to do one relatively soon. My favorite county to do that in is Harris County, which is in Houston, Texas. And pre-COVID, I was doing 4-day trainings in Houston, usually once, maybe twice a year. And then since COVID, of course, the auctions have been shut down. So for those of you who don't know what tax deed investing is, I'm going to explain it in more detail later. But tax deeds, when somebody hasn't paid their property taxes in a number of years, the county needs that money for their hospitals, schools, police, etc. And eventually they've got to put these homes on the auction block. And I've had students pick up single family homes for $7,000, $8,000, $9,000. So for those of you thinking, oh, how am I ever going to get started? I'm not a millionaire. Well, $7,000, most people could put that on a credit card if they had to. I'm not saying that's the best way to do it, but you could. But starting at $7,000, and that wasn't the down payment. That was actually the purchase price. So if you know how to do that strategy properly, then my favorite place to do that is Harris County. You don't want to go to a auction ever, especially not a tax deed auction, if you don't know what you're doing, because you will lose your shirt. We are going to get a lot more detail on that. But yes, I do plan on doing my tax deed classes sometime this year. My favorite auction, the Harris County one, that was shut down for 14 months. And normally on a typical month, let's say 500 homes change hands. So they're around 7,000 homes behind that would have got auctioned off during this past year that never got auctioned off. And then on top of it, there's all the homes that would have got foreclosed on that never did get foreclosed on because of the moratorium. And so I'm going to talk to you, later I'm going to teach you not just how you can take advantage of what happens at the auction, but how you can also create a win for that homeowner that's in the process of losing their home and create a win for them. But to answer your question, I will do a tax deed training this year if it becomes where I would call safe to do it. So I'm waiting. Right now, the auctioneers are they're being very, very careful, and they're opening up very slowly. They're putting a very small amount of inventory each month. The auction takes place on the first Tuesday of every month, by the way. And the first one was last month, that was the first one in 14 months. They auctioned off a very small amount of properties. And because they're not auctioning off a big amount, number one, you're not going to get a good deal, because when they go full speed ahead, you will get a good deal. Right now, they're treading very carefully, as they should be. And so once I see that they've been open for a while, they start to put more inventory on the auction block. And also it's safe. Like, the last thing I'd want is to bring a group of people somewhere and then somebody gets COVID. Like, I don't want to live with that. So I am waiting for them to have several auctions, make sure nothing bad happens, and then I'm going to put something on the calendar once we get to that point. But right now, I wouldn't recommend even going to that auction, even if you knew how. Even if you've been trained by me, don't go there yet, because it's just a very small amount of inventory and it's competitive. You're not going to get a good deal. So wait till the good deals start to happen. And but we'll be talking a lot more on that strategy. It's one of my favorites. Last time I went to the auction I did a training probably, I want to say 3 months before COVID happened. And at that particular auction, there was a fair bit of inventory. There were a few good deals changing hands. But yeah, there was definitely some competition, and there will be competition. The great news, though, is going forward, there's going to be way more inventory than there used to be. There's that big backlog, as I mentioned, and there will be a lot of opportunity with that. And you got to remember, the Harris County auction is one auction, and hundreds of properties, sometimes thousands of properties change hands there every month, but all across the United States. And by the way, for my Canadians can partake in these auctions in the U.S. I actually have a team on the ground in Harris County that goes to the auction on behalf of my students. So you actually don't have to physically be there to potentially take down a deal. But there's auctions that take place all over the United States, and some of them are monthly, some are more than monthly, some are once a year, some are twice a year. But there's auctions taking place probably almost every day of the year, except for maybe Christmas. There's probably an auction almost every day besides the holidays. And once you learn how to do this strategy, there's a lot of opportunity. But I'm also going to teach you something that I call the trifecta of real estate. We're going to get to that. And I'm going to show you 3 different ways you can monetize these auctions. So the first thing I'm going to do, though, is, now I've answered all the questions, I just want to let my Canadian friends know that everything I'm teaching you can either be done also in Canada. I talk about the US. That's my favorite place to invest. I am Canadian. I haven't bought a property in Canada in probably 15 years since I discovered the US and how much more lucrative it is. But Canada is a very difficult place, especially right now, but it's a very difficult place to be a successful real estate investor for a couple of reasons. One, and by the way, I didn't use the word impossible, I'll use the term more difficult. And I'm going to show you how, as a Canadian, you can invest in the US as well. And you can do it remotely without even having to go there. Because I know for Canadians, it's a pain to get back over that border once you leave, as I know very well. One of the main reasons why I love the US is in Canada, we have something called the Privacy of Information Act. And what that means is that if I wanted to go get a list of people who were behind on their mortgage payments, I would have to go to the courthouse. There's a few ways to do it. It's a lot more difficult. But in the US, they've got something called the Freedom of Information Act. And what that means is that everything is pretty much public domain. If I want to get, like, for example, when I talk about the trifecta of real estate and I talk about these auctions that take place, well, every month the county publishes a list online of these people who are in trouble, and they're 3 to 4 weeks away from losing their home. And in some ways I prefer the Canadian system. I don't think everybody's dirty laundry should be hung out there. But as a real estate investor, and by the way, I don't even like the term real estate investor. I like the term problem solver. If I want to go and help people solve their problems, I need to know who's got a problem, first of all, and what their problem is. And once I know that, if I can come up with a solution for them, then I can create a win for them and a win for me. And the win for me usually means I get a paycheck. The win for them is I usually get them in a much better position than where they were. And quite often I can save them from losing their home to foreclosure. And to me, that's what real estate is all about. It's about creating win-win scenarios. And whenever you do that, you can make a really good career out of helping people, because when you do something and you help somebody out of a predicament, they're going to tell all their friends. And pretty soon, that's a great thing about this business, is that I know for some of you that have never been in real estate, it might sound really daunting. It's like, oh, it sounds like so much work. It kind of takes on a life of its own. Once you get going, once you start doing deals, people will start contacting you. They start to tell their friends. And if you save somebody from foreclosure, sometimes their lender is going to call you up and say, hey, you helped Bill Smith over at 123 Main Street. You have 20 other people that need your help. How can we work together? So all of a sudden you go from 0 to like 100 in no time at all. So for those of you who think this might sound like overwhelming or it's a lot of work, there is some work. I'm definitely not somebody who's ever going to tell you that it's get rich quick and you're just going to go and do your first deal and be a millionaire in a week. That's not going to happen. Or if it is, then you're going to be teaching. But it is something that it's definitely, you can make relatively good money relatively fast, and more importantly, have a sustainable career. Not something where you're a flash in the pan, where you got your one lucky deal, like how I started. I got that one lucky deal because the market took off. But then I learned how to turn that into something sustainable and repeatable, something I can do over and over and over again. And that's a great thing about real estate, is once you get going, you have to start somewhere. We all start at 0, by the way. But once you get going, you can keep building on it, and it gets easier and easier. I mean, I'll give you an example. Like I said, I'm right now, I've got 0 properties. Even if somebody called me and said, Mike, I got $1 million in my bank, I want to buy some of your turnkey properties in Atlanta, I've got 0 to sell you. And that's not because I'm a super smart negotiator or great. I'm not great at any of those things. It's because of the miles that I put in to get to this point, where we've taken care of people along the way. We've got a good reputation. People, if they want to invest in the Atlanta market, they know that we're going to take care of them. These are things that I had to build up. I didn't start that way. When I first started, there's no way that some of the things I'm doing today would have ever happened. But I kept building up my skill sets, kept adding, and things, the universe will put the right people on your path once you take some action. But it's really important that you take some action. You've got to do some work. And so anyway, going back to where we are, obviously, like I said, we're kind of getting to be at a crossroads where we're going from a place where there's a shortage of properties. There's a lot of money available in the marketplace for very, very cheap. It's creating a bit of a hysteria where people are, they're just competing with each other to get properties. And that, I believe, is going to shift probably in a small scale in the next 90 days, and in a bigger scale probably next 6 to 9 months, as we start to see the foreclosures become more and more prevalent in the market. As we see more and more people who had their head buried in the sand realizing that, now I can't keep my head buried in the sand, because now, even though maybe the mortgage company hasn't been bugging me because they're not allowed to, that's starting to change. And that check I was getting from the government, that's not coming in anymore. Now we're hitting the new, I'd like to say we're going back to normal. 2019 is long gone. We're never going back to 2019, but we are going to have a new normal. And the new normal, by the way, I'm not saying this in any way to be, that's not a doomsday prediction. 2019 is gone. 2021 and 2022, I believe, are in some ways going to be a lot better than 2019. I think we've probably learned a lot through what we've gone through. We've had to learn to cope with certain things and readjust. And the word of the year in 2020 was pivot. We've had to pivot in a lot of cases. And I think we're going to be better off in a lot of ways. But Anybody who thinks we're going back to where we were in 2019, I don't think that we're ever going to see that normal. If that was normal to you, we're not going back there. And so we need to readapt and have new skill sets. And I think some of us learned. I mean, I remember when I first got into real estate, like I said, my mother was not happy. She wanted me to be a lawyer, have more steady income, something more predictable, not doing this crazy entrepreneurial stuff that I love to do. But a lot of us are starting to realize that the things that we took for granted, like, oh, well, we'll just have our job and we'll get paid every 2 weeks. Well, that changed a lot. A lot of people did not still have that job. A lot of people lost their jobs in the past year and a half. And the one thing I can say as a real estate investor, I have never laid myself off. I've never fired myself. And through this whole pandemic, I managed to make more money than I ever did pre-COVID. And so this is what's possible for every single person here. It's not just because I'm some lucky guy. It's not because I, like I said, was born with any special skill sets. It's all stuff that I learned over time by taking action. So anyway, I'm going to talk about what is coming down the pipeline. I don't really want to talk about the past because that's a history course, but I want to talk to you about what is coming down the pipeline, how you can potentially benefit from that, and also, more importantly, create a win-win for other people, so that when you do something and you're creating win-wins all the time, it's very easy to wake up very excited for what you do. And it's very easy to feel inspired and happy and fulfilled because you know you're making a difference. It's a lot different than if you're just doing something because, hey, I need this quick paycheck. And so everything I'm going to teach you is all about win-wins. A lot of stuff I'm going to teach you requires very little, sometimes no capital. And this is stuff that you can do from your computer for the most part, for a lot of these strategies. And it's stuff you can literally get started with if you wanted to later this afternoon. After we're done talking, if you wanted to, you could actually go and get started. And so to me, I don't want to make it sound like it's easy, and it's definitely not get rich quick, but it really isn't. None of this is rocket science. None of this stuff. If there's an 8-year-old on the call right now, and I don't know if that, I hope there is, an 8-year-old can do this stuff. It's not anything that you don't need to be a rocket scientist to do any of this. So, but what is coming down the pipeline? Like I mentioned, people needing our help. As I mentioned, we are problem solvers. There's going to be a lot of people with various different problems. People will be having to get rid of their homes for various different reasons, such as obviously loss of job, loss of business. A lot of people have been spending more time with their spouse than they normally would. There's going to be a lot of divorces. There's a lot of different dynamics that are creating and will be creating on a bigger scale some challenges for people. And so I'm going to start off with one of the strategies I'd recommend for those of you who maybe are in a tough financial spot, don't have a lot of, maybe you have no capital. You're thinking, oh, I'm hoping Mike's going to come up with something because I'm desperate at this point. So this is the strategy for people that maybe have never done a real estate deal because one, it's low risk. Two, it requires almost no money. If you have money, you can put it on steroids and do more marketing, but it's something called wholesaling. And a lot of people don't really know how to do wholesaling properly. So I'm going to give you the Coles Notes version here, but I'm going to give you enough that you can actually go and apply some of this. So what wholesaling is, it's basically you're going and finding a motivated seller, you're finding a distressed seller, and then you're putting that home under contract. I know you're saying, well, how am I going to put it under contract? I don't have the money to buy that home. Bear with me, stick with me. And then you're going to go find somebody else to go and assign that contract to. So here's what it looks like. Imagine you are, we get off this call today, you're driving your kids, dropping them off at their soccer practice, and you see this home that you've driven by 100 times and never thought anything of it because it's falling apart. There's tarps on the roof. The weeds are knee high, and the home looks like it's been abandoned and sitting there empty for years. You've driven by it, you drive by it all the time, and until today, you never thought anything about it. Today, you're going to think differently because this is the key to finding a wholesale deal. You're going to look for that type of property. You're going to look for something where obviously the owner doesn't have any pride of ownership in it. People don't just leave their home falling apart for no reason. There's always a story behind that. And so what you're going to do is now you're driving past it, you're going to jot down the address, and then you're going to do a little bit of research. And you're going to track down the owner. Quite often it's as simple as just pulling title. For those of you I know Phil's in Calgary, there's a website called Act2, ACTII.com, act2.com. and you can pull title in 2 seconds. In other places, there's different ways to do it, but you're going to find out who owns that property, and then you're going to try to find out how to contact them. So I'm just going to let's do an example. You drive past this home, looks like it's falling apart. You jot down the address. You get home, do a tiny bit of research, figure out who the owner is, and then you make a call to them and you say, listen, I drove past your home at 123 Main Street. It looks like it's in pretty bad shape and disrepair. Like, what's going on with your? I'm not calling to give you crap. I'm not with the HOA. I'm not here to bug you. I'm just curious because I'm a real estate investor, and you'll quite often get a story like this. Well, you know what? My aunt died. She left me this property. I inherited it, and I thought getting real estate was supposed to be a good thing. And every day I'm getting a call from the HOA saying I got to go and take care of the weeds and fix the roof. I'm getting calls from neighbors that are really angry. I'm getting calls from the city saying I owe back taxes on it. And like, this is horrible. I wish I could just get this property out of my hair. And so you've now done, let's say you've done a little bit of research and this home is worth, we'll just use really round numbers. The home is worth $200,000. And the person says, you know what, if I got $100,000 for this property, I would do anything to have somebody take it off my hands. So you know that this deal has a lot of equity in it, but you don't have that $100,000 cash to buy it. So for most people, that would be the end of the discussion. It's like, oh, well, I wish I could buy it, but there's nothing I can do. Well, no, because now you're going to know how to wholesale. So what you're going to do is you're going to put that home under contract. You're going to write an offer to purchase on it, and you're going to put in that contract what's called an escape clause. Now, what an escape clause is, it's a way for you to get away from that contract should you not be able to put it together. And by put it together, what I mean is you've got to now go find a buyer for it. So just give me 1 sec here. I'm going to grab some water. All right, sorry about that. So you put it under contract, you put a clause in there. What I mean by escape clause, you might put something like subject to approval by my partner. And your partner is going to be whoever you're going to do that deal with, whoever you're going to sell it to. So now you're hanging out with me today. So, obviously I'm a real estate investor. And so maybe you call me up and go, hey, Mike, I found this property. There's probably $100,000 profit in it. I don't have the money to do it. But if you're willing to give me $10,000 or $20,000, whatever it is that we negotiate, if you're willing to give me $20,000, I will assign that contract to you. What that means is if I agree to it, I'm going to cut you a check for $20,000. You get paid very early in the deal. You don't have to wait to see if I'm successful with it. If I take that property, I go flip it, make $100,000, you still made $20K. If I go and I totally mess up and I lose $100,000, you still made $20K. So you get paid very, very quickly. You get paid early on in the deal, and there's almost no risk because if you don't get the property, you put a clause in. If you don't find a buyer, you put a clause in that contract that allows you to get out of that contract. And so you're going to phone somebody, you're going to call somebody like myself. Eventually, your goal is to build a list of buyers so that, and remember I said how easy real estate gets over time if you do the work. Well, imagine right now that happened to me. I drove past the property. I saw that it needed a lot of work. I called up the owner, saw there was $100,000 equity. Imagine all my money was tied up and I couldn't do that deal myself. Well, I've got an email list of 9,000 buyers all over, not just North America, but worldwide. I've got 9,000 buyers. I would just get my team to send out an email. And if it's a good deal, I'm sure within a few minutes, there'd be people fighting over that deal. Now, it didn't start like that. I didn't start off with a buyer's list. I had to build the buyer's list. But all you need really is one buyer. If you've got one person like me, and if anybody ever calls me up and says, hey, Mike, will you trade $20,000 for $100,000? I will say yes 100% of the time. I will never, if your deal is legitimately a good deal, I would never say no to that. I'm always going to take that deal. And so it's that simple. Like I said, it's not rocket science. Your goal is to go find some distressed properties where the owner wants to get rid of it for whatever reason, and you're going to put it under contract, and then you're going to find a buyer, and I'm your first buyer. And if I say no to it, it's probably not that good a deal because I will never, like I said, I will never turn down $100K for $20K ever. And so that's all you need is one good buyer, and you're set. But there's definitely different ways than just driving around. That's called driving for dollars. And sometimes you, by mistake, pass by a home that is in a distressed situation. Other times you're going to do, you're going to purposely just drive around the neighborhood for hours, going street by street by street, looking for these type of homes. There's also ways to do this online. And so, for example, we're going to talk about the tax deed auction, and part of the trifecta is getting the list. There's a list of people that are in trouble, and when you see that list, these people are 3 or 4 weeks away from losing their home to the county and having to go to auction, and they can't get that property back after that. So this is a list of people that need your help. So it doesn't even have to be driving. There's a whole bunch of different ways that you can find these people in distress. But it's as simple as that. That could be your first deal. And the only money you need is, usually you'll need what's called EMD, earnest money deposit. It can literally be $1 as long as you can get the owner to agree to it. Most owners don't know what to ask for, but sometimes you'll have to put $500 down, maybe $1,000 down, maybe $1. If you find a really good deal and you think it's something that I might want to buy, for example, I would give you the earnest money deposit. A lot of times you can have the home sold. Now, by the way, be careful. You don't want to start calling investors unless you trust them and say, hey, I got this home at 123 Main Street. It's going to make you $100,000. If you give me 20, if you don't have it under contract, somebody could circumvent you and go straight to the owner and not pay you a dime. So you want to be careful. You don't want to go and share all the details. But if you said, hey, Mike, I found this property. It's $100,000 under market. The owner is desperate. I'm not going to give you the address. I'll give you all the details. And I'm going to get you to sign a contract saying you're not going to circumvent me. But I also need the deposit to put it under contract. Well, I would absolutely do that. So there's different ways to do it, and they don't require any. They require very little or no money. And most of the stuff, like I said, this is stuff that you can be doing just while you're taking the kids to soccer. You don't even have to be making a very big effort to find these properties. There's quite often a lot of them out there. So that's what wholesaling is. Do you guys have any questions on wholesaling before I move on? But I just wanted to show you that, all these people say, oh, you can't do it with no money down. You can't do real estate unless you got a big bankroll. It's really time consuming, or they make it sound like it's rocket science. It really is not. So anyway, I don't see any questions in the chat box. You may be posting on, I'm in StreamYard right now, and I know that this is posting on Instagram, it's posting on Facebook, YouTube. I don't know if everybody's comments are showing up here or not. So if they're not, I apologize. I'm not a StreamYard expert, but I'm hoping I'm getting all your questions. So if you do have anything that I'm missing, I don't know if there's anyway. I don't know how to do it. Do I still invest in Georgia, Atlanta? Yeah, that is actually one of the best buy and hold markets. Actually, I'll go into that right now because that's something I wanted to talk about. I am sold out. I have no properties left there. Normally, I sell turnkey rental properties, and what that means is I normally go and buy properties in bulk from the banks. 20, 30, 40 at a time. We inspect them, we fix them, put tenants in place, and then my property management team looks after them, and we've sold those to investors from probably 20 to 25 different countries around the world. Oh, good. I see Phil's comment. He's on YouTube, so that's working. And I see Ben. He's on Facebook. Okay, I think I'm getting your comment. So once again, I apologize if I'm missing them. Yeah. So we've been selling properties in Atlanta for close to 10 years. We've sold around 1,100, 1,200 homes there in that time frame, and now we are totally sold out. Having said that, that is still one of my favorite markets. So one of the trends and I'm glad you asked that question because it reminds me I want to talk about what some of the trends that we're seeing now. And one of the things that's going on in a big way is people are leaving expensive places right now, places where the cost of living is really high. And where they're going are places that are affordable and also places where there are jobs. And Georgia, the government is very pro-business, meaning they give a lot of tax incentives for businesses to open up shop there. And of course, they know that these businesses are going to come there, hire a whole bunch of people, and the government can tax all the employees. And so whether you think that's fair or not, as a real estate investor, to me, that I want to be in the path of progress. I want to know where people are moving to. And I want to get there before they figure out that's where they're going to. And so we're seeing a lot of people right now on the West Coast. We'll use California because everybody's leaving California right now in droves. And they're really sick of the tax system there. It's a very punitive tax system. I know Ben's up in the Bay Area, so he knows what I'm talking about. But the taxes are very, very high there. And so people are leaving and they're going to places like Texas. They're going to places like Phoenix, Vegas. They're going to Idaho. They're going to all these different places. And some of these places were very inexpensive. And these Californians are going there with a lot of money in their pockets. They're selling their homes in California. They want to get out of that tax system, and they're going to these sort of markets. Now, on the west side of the country, New Yorkers are leaving. It's very expensive to live, obviously, in a place like Manhattan. A lot of people are leaving the expensive cities, and the trend is you're going to cheaper places with jobs. And Atlanta is definitely one of those places that fits that category. It's head office to Coca-Cola, Turner Broadcasting, Home Depot, Delta Airlines. Microsoft just announced that they're making that one of their hubs. They're bringing in 9,000 jobs, 9,000 new jobs being created. So once again, you want to be in the path of progress, and that market will work really well if you're a buy and hold investor, because you're one of the most important things that I mentioned there when I listed off all that list of companies like Delta and Home Depot and Coca-Cola. The reason that's important is if you look at a city that's got one industry, if you look at my hometown of Calgary, where it's mostly known for oil. If you look at Detroit, where it's mostly known for automotives, well, if that one industry is failing, if it's not doing well, you're going to see the market plummet. You're going to see people moving away, the population shrinking, and the demand goes down. And so you're not going to get any appreciation in a market where demand is going down. And that's how we get rich in real estate. We want that appreciation. So you want to go where people are moving to, and you want to either be flipping homes to them, or you want to be holding them or renting them. And that's really the end game, by the way, for every investor, in my opinion, is that even if you're if you're the top flipper in your market, you're making $5 million a year flipping homes. If you're not holding on to some of them and starting to create that passive income, you're always going to be forced to work. That money will stop coming in as soon as you stop working. And so to me, I would, if I was looking to get started, let's say you're going to do the tax deed auction, I would maybe flip if I had very little money, I'd flip 2 or 3 homes, and I'd take some of that cash, buy something to hold, keep it as a rental. And I'd go buy 2 or 3 homes, keep something as a rental. Once you've got enough rental properties, once you've got enough cash flow coming in, hopefully on autopilot, meaning what I mean by that is you're not managing those properties, have somebody else manage them for you so the money shows up in your bank account without you having to trade your time for money. Once you get to that point, then you can have the freedom to do whatever you like. And that's what I've managed to do. I built up a portfolio of rental properties that pays for my lifestyle. And I'm making money while I'm right now I'm near the beach. When I'm on the beach, I'm making money. When I'm hanging out with my grandkids, I still have money coming. When I volunteer, I still have money coming in. And that's what I like to help people build, because teaching you how to flip homes from the auction, that's awesome. That will definitely put more money in your bank account. But at some point, if you ever got sick, or if the auction shuts down because of the pandemic, well, now you've got no money coming in. Whereas if you own rental properties, guess what? Those are always, if you buy in the right markets, those will always be putting money in your pocket on autopilot at the end of the month, especially during a pandemic when people have to stay home more. So that's some of the stuff that you want to keep in the back of your mind as I'm teaching these strategies, that the end game isn't to keep doing that forever and just put in more hours if you want to make more money. It's actually the opposite. Start buying stuff to hold, have other people manage them for you. And that's what I was doing in Atlanta for my clients. But now, like I said, we're out of inventory because we normally buy our homes from the banks and they haven't been foreclosing because they're not allowed to. And so we literally sold out of all our inventory there. So I love that market. I strongly recommend it for buying and holding. It's also a good flip market. It's a great wholesale market. Wholesaling, by the way, you can do, if you're Canadian, if you're one of my Canadian friends, I recommend you can do it close to home, but I also recommend you pick a US market, because like I said, I'm going to show you pretty shortly here how you can find deals that are off market, meaning they're not on the MLS. You show you how to find off market deals that are published and very easy to find. So you can find a list of people that need your help. In Canada, it's very difficult to do. Is Douglasville a good place to invest? So that's a suburb of it's near Atlanta in Georgia. I love almost all of Georgia. Any major center, closer it is to Atlanta, the better. The thing about Atlanta is that unlike a lot of cities, people don't mind living further away from the city itself. Like in a lot of cities, everybody wants to be, if you're working in Manhattan, it's obviously very advantageous to live in Manhattan, because to get there from the other boroughs can take hours It's a lot of time. People in Atlanta, a lot of them work in some of the surrounding cities. And the other trend that we're seeing is more and more people are starting to work from home. More and more people are doing stuff over Zoom. So things are starting to change. And these are trends you want to be on top of, because if you're buying stuff in the inner city because people used to like being close to work, well, if they're not going to their office anymore, that, you know, those properties are actually going to come down in value. But to answer your question, yes, I'm going to qualify that. Every market is, there's a saying, and it goes, don't wait to buy real estate, buy real estate and wait. So it really depends on what your strategy is. So when you say, is it a good place to invest in spite of crazy high prices? Well, it depends on what you're looking to do. If with those crazy high prices, you're also getting good rent numbers, well, then that's okay. It doesn't matter. You don't have to get a property for pennies on the dollar to make it a good rental property. If you plan on flipping it, well, you've got to get it at a good price. You have to have a spread between what you're paying for it and what it's worth. And same with if you're wholesaling. If you're trying to wholesale something that's at market value, that's worth $200,000, you got it under contract for $198,000. Nobody's going to buy your wholesale deal off of you. Nobody's going to buy your flip either. So I love Georgia in general as a place to buy and hold. If you can find a good deal within that market where the prices are high, great. But as I mentioned, we're kind of hitting a crossroads here where things could change. I think that what we're likely to see is a lot of the markets that are super expensive, we're going to see some of those coming down. Like if everybody keeps leaving California, right now it's still expensive. The home prices are still crazy, but that's going to change as the demand goes down. You're going to see a lot less people moving there unless the prices become more affordable. And that's why real estate is very cyclical. And so some of the markets that are underpriced, like a lot of the markets in Georgia, in my opinion, are way underpriced. I mean, one of the homes I just sold to an investor in Atlanta was $80,000. And I know for those of you listening in San Francisco or even Calgary or Toronto, Vancouver, New York, that's not even a down payment on a shed. And so we were still selling homes in Georgia under 100K. And to me, that's like way undervalued for how good the economy is, the size of the population. I've seen it as being undervalued for a long time. And that's why I started investing there in the first place. And so I'm a really big fan of Georgia for just about any strategy. You can get the property at the right price, but don't ever get caught up in that pandemonium when everybody's fighting for properties. It's not when you don't want to add fuel to the fire. Find a different way or a different market to purchase it. You don't want to pay too much just for the sake of getting a property. And that's some of the stuff I'm going to teach you is how do you get these properties that are below market value so you don't have to feed into this feeding frenzy. And the reason I mentioned off-market properties earlier is because the stuff that's on market on the MLS, that's the most competitive, the most competitive place to buy a property is on the MLS in most markets. And so you want to find stuff that other people don't have access to. And that's some of the stuff I'm going to show you shortly. Let's see, buy and hold created by real estate investors and making over to stock investors. I'm not 100% sure what that means, but so I think what you're saying is you're going to make a lot more being a real estate buy and hold investor than holding stocks. And I would agree 100%. Stocks are heavily manipulated. We've seen several examples of that recently. What was that software? What was it? GameStop. And a bunch of kids managed to get that thing to the stock to skyrocket based on nothing. And so when we see the stock market, it's heavily manipulated. But more importantly, even if it wasn't, even if all things were created equal, number one, real estate, we're not going back to living in caves. So that means people are either buying homes or they're renting homes. And if they're buying, I want to be the person selling to them. If they're renting, I want to be the person renting to them. And so real estate is not a man-made. Shelter is something that is a necessity no matter what. Stocks is something that's man-made. It's fabricated, very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. And also, very importantly, there's a lot of tax incentives to own real estate, especially in the U.S. And so, if you own rental properties, you can what's called depreciate them over 27 and a half years. And so some of the richest people on the planet invest in real estate even people that didn't make their money in real estate to begin with, when you become high net worth, your accountant should tell you, hey, it's a good time to start buying some real estate so you can bring down your taxable income. And you can use things such as depreciation. Somebody like Warren Buffett, for example, he didn't initially make his money in real estate, but his accountants told him, listen, you should buy a whole bunch of real estate so that you don't pay very much tax. And he openly admits that he pays less tax as a percentage than his assistant does. And I have no clue how much his assistant makes. I'm pretty sure his assistant is not a billionaire. He is, and he's paying less tax. And so the rich people stay rich and keep more of their money that they make away from the government legally by owning rental properties. And you don't get that with stocks. You don't get that with any other investment. The other thing is most other investments, like for example, if you wanted to go to a restaurant tonight, you can't say, hey, I've got these stocks, just will you feed me? I'll eventually sell the stocks. You have to sell the stock to pay for the dinner. With real estate, if you're buying and holding real estate, at the end of the month, my property spit out paychecks for me, and I can go use that money for whatever I like, but I don't have to sell the asset. And that's one of the few examples of an investment where it gives you money even while you're hanging on to it. You don't have to sell it, and it's giving you tax benefits at the same time. And so I'm going to give a disclaimer that I'm not an accountant, not a lawyer, by the way. So if you don't believe some of the stuff I'm telling you, check with your accountant. And so I'm not in any way trying to give you advice on anything legal or accounting wise. However, I can tell you a lot of the richest people on the planet own real estate for the reason of bringing down their taxable income legally. And some of them don't even, they obviously nobody complains about the cash flow and the appreciation. That's the icing on the cake. But their main reason for buying rental properties is to bring down their taxable income. So Atlanta has low property taxes. Yes, they do. It's around 1 to 1.25%. They also have very low insurance. And so the great thing about holding properties in and around Atlanta is that you get to keep most of the rent. And so you heard me talk about Houston a little bit earlier. That's one of my favorite places to flip properties because of the tax deed auctions, but I don't like holding properties as much there. And the reason for that, their property taxes tend to be around 2.6+% of the property value compared to 1.25% in and around Atlanta. And on top of it, their insurance was already high before these crazy storms they had this past winter. I can't even imagine how much they might have gone up. But I can tell you that typically a home that I may pay $500 a year to insure in Atlanta, normally in Houston, it's like $1,200, $1,500 a year. That's been my experience. So you get to keep, if you're holding properties and you're getting rent, you get to keep a lot more of that rent, a lot less of it goes to expenses. And so that's always what you want to look at, not just how much rent are you going to get, but what do you get to keep in your pocket after you paid the property taxes, after you paid for insurance, etc. And that's the most important number is what do you get to keep, what goes in your pocket. So I think I've got all your questions. All right, well, I'm going to talk about what I call the trifecta of real estate, because this is going to be very, very lucrative now that the auctions are starting to open back up. And this is stuff that you can get started on. Once again, some of the stuff you could literally do this afternoon. If you're motivated enough to do it, you could actually start doing this afternoon. So many of you know that I've been teaching the tax deed training for around, I think around 11 or 12 years now. I think I did my first one 11 or 12 years ago. And back in those days, I just taught people, hey, get the list. Here's your due diligence that you need to do to make sure that it's a safe investment. And that was a training. And then over time, I started to add a lot more content to that. And I came up with some other ways to monetize besides just actually going to the auction. Now, the auction is great. And if you're consistent with it, like I said, I've had students get, like I had one student of mine, he picked up a single family home for $7,200. It was probably worth around $90,000 to $100,000 at the time. It rented at the time for $900. I'm sure it's $1,100 or $1,200 now. And he just decided to keep it. And you can do the math. If you buy a property for $7,200, it puts $900 rent in your pocket every month. It doesn't take that long to get that property paid for. Now you've got your money back to go to another auction and just rinse and repeat. Get a second property, third property, fourth property. So that's what I used to focus on teaching. And then over time, I realized, man, we're sitting on a much bigger gold mine than that. And so now I've got something that I call the trifecta of real estate. And so for these auctions, as I mentioned earlier, every month you're going to get a list published by the county listing all the homes that are going to go up on the auction block. And what most people do is they look at that list. If they know what they're doing, then they're hopefully doing some due diligence. Some people don't know to do due diligence, but you take that list and then you decide, hey, which of these properties make sense for me to go after at the auction? And that's great. That's one part of the trifecta. That's absolutely a good strategy. But because we get this list 3 to 4 weeks in advance, to me, that's a list of people that are in trouble that need our help. And I would much rather help somebody who hasn't lost their home yet than go, I don't mind supporting the county because I know that money is going to keep their schools open and their police department and hospitals. So it's still going to a good cause. But if I can help prevent somebody from losing their home to the auction, I'm going to do that. And you can do this too. And so you can go to, 50, we have a 15-year-old. Yes, keep listening. I love that you're here. I wish I was as smart as you at 15 and actually took the time to learn this sort of stuff. That's awesome. Thank you for being here. So anyway, there's this list published, and if you go, there's a site, they changed the name on it. Let me just get you the current link. It's lgbs.com, and it's actually the name of a law firm. I'll publish that in the comments. I don't know if it goes to all the different, depending on where you're at. I don't know if you're going to, hopefully you'll see it, but it's lgbs.com. And that's a list of properties going up for auction all over Texas, and I believe they do Pennsylvania as well. And so you can go to this site, and like I said, around 3 to 4 weeks before the auction, they're going to publish a list of all the homes that are going up on the auction block. When I see that list, I'm going to go through that list and assume that most of these people do not want to lose their home. Now you got to remember, these people are not like 1 or 2 days late. These people have not paid probably their taxes, their property taxes in 2, 3, 4 years before the county actually does anything about it. And so these people have been receiving things in the mail during that 2, 3 year period. The county's been sending stuff to them saying, hey, your home's if you don't get caught up, eventually we're going to have to sell your home at an auction. And probably after 2 or 3 years of hearing this and not having it happen, I think people become complacent. They go, yeah, whatever, it's never going to happen. And then suddenly they got something in the mail saying, hey, the first Tuesday of next month, your home is going on the auction block. This is your last chance to pay. So these people are very, very motivated. They're very desperate. They're in a very bad situation, and they need our help. And so here's some of the things you can do is you can send out letters to these people through the mail. You can get on a call with them. And remember earlier I told you that I like to teach you how to work smart, not hard. So I would hire somebody, maybe a stay-at-home mom who, when her kids are sleeping, has a couple of extra hours. I'd get somebody else to make the phone call, somebody else to mail the letters. It wouldn't be me. Maybe when you first start, especially if maybe you lost your job and you got some spare time, absolutely. But you'll actually make a lot more money. Imagine you hired 10 people to help you do this, maybe overseas. They work for a lot less than we do here in North America. But if you can build a team around this and have them getting on calls with these people, sending out letters, and hitting up all of them, because if it's just you, you're probably going to get to a small subsection. If you can bring some other people on your team, you can get to all of them. And then you're going to come up with a solution for them. Now, if we go back to the last big recession, which was around 2008, I set up a company back then. I called it Foreclosure Fixers. And with Foreclosure Fixers, instead of sending out the typical postcard, you probably have all seen them in the mail. We buy homes, we buy ugly homes, we pay cash for homes, all that stuff. Instead, I actually took the time to learn the foreclosure laws. I hired an attorney to teach me the ins and outs and the timing of the foreclosure laws. And I send out flyers that said, hey, at Foreclosure Fixers, we can help stop the foreclosure. And so it had a much higher rate of people calling me back. When you send out something, we buy homes, you have to send out a lot of those to get somebody to actually respond to it. You have to keep sending them out. With this one, when you send out something saying, hey, I can help stop the foreclosure, that is huge, because these people, all they've been getting is phone calls from people, from lawyers and collection agencies, and people saying, hey, we're taking your home from you. Nobody has come there offering help. Everybody's on the other side of the equation. We're taking your home from you. And so when I would send out stuff saying I can help stop the foreclosure, and I actually meant it, I wasn't just using that as a ploy to get people to call me. I actually did have solutions for some of these people. I got a much higher, a number of people contacting me wanting my help. And so with foreclosure fixers, I found there were two different types of people that would contact me. The first type would be, I would describe them as sometimes bad things happen to good people. And right now, I can't think of a time in history where more good people are being affected. Like just people have never missed a mortgage payment in their life, and they've never missed a credit card payment. They pay everything on time. They've got perfect, they had an 800 plus credit score pre-COVID. And now all of a sudden they lost their job or their business went under. Well, these people didn't mean it's not that they had bad intentions. They fully meant to pay every payment on time, but you can't do that in the middle of a pandemic when your business gets shut down. So sometimes bad things happen to good people. And these type of people usually are very, very good with money. And quite often I would loan them, I would become a lender. So if they, let's say they lost their job, they got $10,000 behind on their payments, and now they're working again. So they're working and they can afford their monthly payments again, but they can't come up with that lump sum of 10,000 or 15 or 20 or whatever that is. They don't have the money to come up with that lump sum. And so I would go and I'd become a lender to them. I'd loan them the money. I'd of course protect myself. There'd be paperwork. And I was very transparent and say, listen, nobody else is going to be crazy enough to lend you money. You're in arrears. Nobody in their right mind would loan you money, but I'm willing to take a chance on you. But if you don't make your payments, I make them sign something called a quitclaim deed. And what a quitclaim deed means is they're waiving their right to, I wouldn't have to foreclose on them. If they stop paying me, I wouldn't have to go through the whole foreclosure process, which is a legal process. Now, I'm happy to say that every single person that I loan money to paid me back. And that's because I was very careful who I loaned money to, because remember I said there's two different types of people that would contact me. That's group one. And I would try to help save them, keep them in their homes, and they would just pay me back with interest. So I made a little bit of money myself too. And it was a great win-win. So the second type of person that would contact me is somebody who didn't need a pandemic to happen for them to be in trouble. And quite often people live beyond their means. They buy a bigger house than what they can afford. And they're really one missed paycheck away from being in trouble. And people like that, if you were to loan them money, you can pretty much kiss it goodbye. They're going to burn through your money and they're never going to have that money to pay you back. And so you definitely don't want to loan money to them. So what I would do with those people is I'd give them what I call soft landing. And what I mean by soft landing is instead of them, going through the next 3 weeks being dealt, having collection agencies calling them all day long, and then it eventually going to the auction block, I would instead arrange to buy their home off of them. Sometimes I do a joint venture. I'd say, listen, we can sell your home on the MLS. It needs some fixing up. I'll put in the money to fix it up. We'll do a joint venture together. Because I'm investing money, I obviously want a return on that money. But instead of you losing your home and getting zero, we can fix it up, get it sold really quick, and get you a little bit of money, get you back on your feet. Or, sometimes I would get people that it was just too far gone. I couldn't really, at this point, help them stop the foreclosure. I couldn't help them in any other way. But I would buy the home from them, and I'd always make sure that they had money for a damage deposit, several months rent, and I would also make sure they had money for food, and I would also give them some coaching on how to rebuild their credit, help them get into something that was more affordable to them. Sometimes I put them in one of my other properties that was cheaper and do a rent to own to get them back into home ownership. But I give them what I call a soft landing. And I could have, a lot of times I'd be in a position where if I wanted to, these people are super desperate. I could have given them nothing, and potentially, who knows, I think a lot of them would be having to live on the streets or have to move in with a relative. But what I found that happened by actually leaving something on the table for them is they started to call up their friends. Because if they lost their job, pretty good chance they worked with 10 other people that lost their job. Next thing I start getting their friends calling me. But the other thing that started to happen, remember I said earlier that when you start doing the right things, when you start taking action, great things start to happen. Well, I started to get calls from their lenders saying, I don't know how you rescued this property at the last minute, but we have a whole bunch of other people in the same boat as these guys. If you're willing to work with us and help us, we'll reach out to all these people and try to connect you. So this business took on a life of its own. I started off by sending out flyers to get the business going. After that, I never really had to do very much because the business was always, the clients were coming to me. I wasn't looking for clients anymore. And every single person who's watching this, you can do the exact same thing. When you start to go and put your clients first, and by clients first, I still mean it's a win-win. You never want to be a martyr. Okay, you're helping clients, but you're going broke yourself, or you can't put food on the table for your family. You're never going to do that. But instead of going for that home run, instead of going for getting a second base hit and having 10 of those, 10 paychecks coming in instead of the one home run, I'll take a very consistent revenue stream any day over that. And you could absolutely do that. Now, I know some of you are saying, well, I don't have the money to loan them. For the first type of person, I don't have the money to loan them. And the second type of person, I can't just buy their home. I don't have any cash. Well, that's why I taught you about wholesaling. These are properties that you can put under contract. You don't have to be the buyer. You can go find another buyer, or you don't have to be the person loaning the money. Once again, you can call somebody like me and say, hey, I got this person and they need $10,000, but it's safe and there's some equity. And maybe I get involved in that. It doesn't have to be you. And maybe you get a piece of the deal. And so there's different ways, if you're creative, you can make money in real estate, even if you're starting off with zero. And so, but anyway, that's the first part of the trifecta. And I see your questions scrolling, so I'm going to get to them in a minute. But I just want to keep going with this so I don't get sidetracked. So that's the first part of the trifecta, is trying to help people in what's called pre-foreclosure. These people are in the foreclosure process. They haven't lost the home yet. And so they still have control, meaning they can still make decisions. They can still list it with you. They can still sell it to you. They still have options. Once the county actually sells it, they've lost all those rights. There's nothing the previous owner can do at that point. So that's the first part of the trifecta, is creating a win for these people that are going to lose their home very shortly. And sometimes it involves you buying it. Sometimes you're loaning money. Sometimes you're doing a wholesale deal. There's a whole bunch of other strategies I could teach you if you had more time. But those are really good starting points. If you're brand new, that's where I would start. So that's part one. Part two, like I mentioned, is going to the auction, or better yet, because we're working smart, hiring somebody to go to the auction for you. And that's one of the things I do for my students who take my tax deed training. They get to go participate from wherever they live. I've had students from as far away as Australia who've been at the auction from the comfort of their own home. And you don't physically ever have to go to that auction yourself again. I also have people on the team that go and drive by the properties and videotape the streetscape for you. If you want to flip it, I've got people that can fix up the home, people that can help you sell it. If you're looking to rent it, I've got property managers. So you want to build a team, or you want to inherit somebody else's team, which I do for my students. So that once again, you're working smart, not hard. Now, I don't want to make it sound like there's no work involved, because you still have to, even though you have a team, you have to be the quarterback to your team. You have to determine what properties make sense. And that comes from learning the proper due diligence strategies for these properties. But this stuff takes literally probably, to go through the entire list, maybe 3 to 4 hours a month. And most of the job is going to be done by somebody else. So that's the good news. It doesn't have to be working hard. But anyway, so the second part of the trifecta is to go and participate at the auction, either personally or through a proxy, have somebody else helping you. And then the third part is a strategy that almost, even the most sophisticated investors, almost nobody knows about. And it's something called overages. And what that means is when we go to these auctions, the opening bid, where that home starts off at in the bidding, is whatever the back taxes are. So if a home was $5,000, if they were $5,000 behind on property taxes, the bidding is going to start at $5,000. Now, some of them will sell for opening bid, but the majority of them are going to get bid up to something higher. And let's say you saw a home at the auction, opening bid was $5,000 and it sold for $50,000. The first $5,000, that pays for the back taxes. That's the money owed to the county fair and square. And the additional $45,000 is known as either excess funds, surplus funds, or an overage. There's different terminology depending on where in the country you go. And that money actually belongs to the previous homeowner. And most of these homeowners have no clue this money is owed to them. The homeowners are not sitting there at the auction and watching their home get auctioned off. It's a very traumatic event for somebody who's losing their home. They just want to bury their head in the sand. They're probably depressed. The last thing they want to do is go to the auction. They have no idea what that home sold for. And even if they did, they have no idea that this money is owed to them. And so a really amazing strategy, it's a great win-win. It also requires very little capital to get started, is tracking down these people that are owed money by the government. Now, the government will make very little attempt to find these people because there's a statute of limitations. And once that limitation time ends, that money is the government's slush fund. And they don't have to give it back after that. They get to keep it and do whatever they want with it. And we all know they're not doing good things with that money. So a great strategy is to track down these people, say, listen, I know you just lost your home. I'm really sorry to hear that. But the good news is I know somebody who owes you $45,000. And if you're willing to give me a share of that, I'm willing to do all the paperwork. I will chase after it. I will find it for you. And you only pay me if I'm successful. If I'm not successful, you pay me nothing. And so it's a really cool strategy, because these people who, if you just lost your home over $5,000, you're in a really bad spot. And most of these people are either, they're going to have to go live with a relative or a friend, or they're going to be on the streets. Who knows where they're going? And this is going to be a life changer. This is a life-changing event for them. And so you go track them down. That's your job, is to go find them. These days, it's relatively easy to find people online, social media, talk to neighbors. There's 1,000,001 ways to try and track down these people. You start that conversation. You learn how to do the paperwork properly. You submit it. And then I have a friend of mine, she takes 40%. So if she found $45,000 for somebody, she'd take 40%, which is $18,000. And the rest of it goes to that homeowner. So it's a great strategy, because you're helping somebody who's in dire need. I know some of you, I attract very, very heart-centered people. So I know somebody, if you could raise your hand right now, you'd be saying, oh, well, I feel bad for these people. You know, I don't want to add, so I just want to give them all the money. I'm not even going to take part of it. You can absolutely do that. If you're doing the trifecta of real estate, you're making lots of money with people in pre-foreclosure. You're making lots of money at the auctions. If you want to do it and just let these people know how to get the money or help them get it and not take any of it, you can do that too. So you can. I'm a very big proponent of giving back and helping others. You can, but if you want to do that as a business, I'd recommend taking something for your work, and you can take 10%, 20, 30, 40. Most places don't put any limit on what you can charge. Some do. So you want to check to make sure with whatever county you're doing it in that you're within those rules. But it is a phenomenal strategy that you can do with very little capital, because you're not actually buying a home. You're just reuniting somebody with money that's owed to them by the government. And once again, when you're doing something like that, when you're doing helping people that are in a really bad financial spot and reuniting them with money that's legitimately owed to them, that feels really good. And for me, whenever I'm doing something like that, the reason I love to volunteer, and I think for those of you who tuned in early, I did a TED Talk in January, and my TED Talk was on happiness and fulfillment. And for me, how I get fulfillment is by helping other people. And so I do a lot of volunteering, and I do it obviously with the intention of helping other people, but I also do it selfishly because it makes me feel really good inside. And so when you do the reason I've been doing it after 31 years of doing real estate, I still wake up excited every day to do what I do, isn't the paychecks anymore. That excited me early on, absolutely. I was absolutely needing the money and wanting the money, and that was the most important part back in those days. But after a while, another paycheck it's not going to change my lifestyle. And when you're doing something that's helping other people and you're changing their lives, you're excited and inspired. You can't wait to you just can't wait to wake up and do what you're doing. And so after all these years, I still feel very inspired and excited. You might be able to see that in my energy. And that's why I love to inspire other people to do things for the right reasons, do them properly. And you can build a career that you absolutely love and help a lot of people and make a lot of money all at the same time. And then when you get to the point where money is not an object anymore, then you can use that money or just not take money, help people and not even get paid for it, and create win-wins. But that's a trifecta of real estate. And the reason that is going to work really well, and that's going to be one of my favorite strategies going forward, is these auctions all across the country were shut down for a long, long time. So there's a big backlog of properties. So one, we're going to have a big list every month of people in trouble in all the different counties, which means that we can help a lot of people with the pre-foreclosure. If we're not successful helping them there, we can go to the auction, help the county by buying these properties, creating a win for ourselves, hopefully making a nice big paycheck for ourselves, but buying these homes. And then the third part is trying to track down these homeowners, reunite them with money that's owed to them by the government, and create a win there. And you can do any of those for the goodness out of your own heart. And as a give back, you can make money on all three. I'm not here to tell you what to do, but
these are some of the strategies that are going to work really well now that these auctions are starting to reopen. There's a massive backlog. And once again, it's all being one, you need to know, you need to know the things that other people don't know. Most people, if they say, hey, well, if I were to just say, hey, real estate's going to be a great opportunity, but they didn't take the time on a Saturday to tune in to see what strategies are going to be the most effective, yeah, you can make money doing a lot of different strategies in real estate. But if you know where the top money-making deals are, where the low-hanging fruit is, to me, a list being published online every month, that's like gold. And that's why I stopped investing in Canada, because you can't get that in Canada. That would be against the law because of the Privacy of Information Act. But there's ways like that you can find these properties, people in distress, create a win for them. Now you know how to, the basics of wholesaling, so you know that you don't need to have a lot of money. You also know a little bit about overages. You don't need a lot of money. And so I just like to dispel the myths, because a lot of people think, oh, well, only the rich people are going to be able to participate, or the rich are going to keep getting richer. No, the people that are coachable and willing to take the time to learn new strategies and listen to other people that paved the way before them, which luckily I got smart and started to do. As I mentioned, my first deal was a very big success by just out of sheer luck. My second deal was a very big failure because I was too cocky and arrogant and thought I knew everything. And then I got smart and I hired somebody to show me the way. And because of that, I'm still in the industry 31 years later. And so that's, some of the stuff you want to look at is, one, what are the things you can do within the resources that you've got? And so for my 15-year-old, I know you probably don't have $1 million sitting in the bank, but you probably have some more spare time that maybe you spend on Xbox that could be spent doing some research online, for example. And even though you might not be able to buy the property yourself, you could certainly contact me or another investor. And that's all you're doing. You're being a connector. You're finding somebody who's motivated to sell that needs help. You're finding somebody who wants to buy, and you're just connecting the two and getting paid to be the middleman. And some of the stuff, if I would have known this 31 years ago, if I would have been smarter and coachable, it would have been much easier. And I'm not complaining. I am very grateful for how real estate's been for me over these years. But if I would have known then what I know now, it would have been so different, because these auctions were taking place 30 years ago. They've been going since the beginning of property taxes, which was like hundreds of years ago in the US. Since the beginning of property taxes, the government has always had a way to deal with that. And so this is nothing new, but it wasn't on my radar. And so that's why I like to do this stuff and put stuff on your radar that even a lot of sophisticated investors don't know about. Like if you go to an investor meeting and say, hey, I'm looking to get into overages, people are going to look at you like, what the heck's an overage? They have no clue. And so taking the time to find out where the gold is and where the opportunities are is so important. And so those are some of the main strategies. If I was just starting out right now, those are things I'd be focusing on. I've got one client of mine, he's a dentist, and he's been a dentist for many, many years. He's around my age, he's in his mid-50s. And he said, Mike, I'm still passionate about I would still be passionate about what I do, but my vision's not as good. I can't see as well in people's mouths anymore. And my back's starting to hurt from leaning over all the time. And so he's reinventing himself. So a lot of people right now are going through different transitions for different reasons. But even people that have been successful and passionate about the things they're doing, sometimes you just need a change. So if this is something you've been thinking about right now, in my opinion, is the best time to start learning some of this stuff and getting prepared for what's coming down the pipeline. And so I'm not here to pressure or sell you into anything, but I do, for the first time ever, because of COVID, it gave me the bandwidth to create a coaching program, an Inner Circle Mastermind, where we meet frequently, and I teach in a lot more detail, how do you do wholesaling, how do you do these tax deeds, how do you do these overage, and we go step by step by step. And so that's something that I've decided to do while I'm kind of semi-hunkered down. I'm instead of bouncing around to different countries like I normally do, since October, I've been hanging out only in Mexico, other than to go do my TED Talk. I went up to Vegas for that, but I'm staying put a lot more. And so this is the year that I'm launching a whole bunch of trainings. And so if any of this stuff resonates with you and you want to learn how to work further with me, I'm happy to get on a call with you and see if you're a good fit. The trainings are not inexpensive because I really want to keep the integrity of the group. Imagine if I said, hey, everybody, I'm going to do a tax deed training and it's $50. I would have probably 100,000 people show up at my tax deed training, and now nobody's going to get a deal because you're all going to be competing against each other. And so my trainings are purposely, everybody's at a VIP level where you're not surrounded by 500 other people or 1,000 people who I don't know any of their names. Everybody in my group I know personally. And so right now I've got something called the Inner Circle. I've got around 50 members. I'm looking to get it up to maybe 60 or 70, and then I'm going to shut it down because I won't have the bandwidth to handle much more than that. And with that, you get some one-on-one time with me. I've got also several other coaches that specialize in things like multifamily and things called subject to investing, which is for people that can't qualify for mortgage but want to be able to take over a mortgage. I've got people specialize in a whole bunch of different strategies, the overages, the wholesaling, all the stuff. We go in a lot more detail. We do group meetings, usually at least once a week, sometimes more. We're going to meet in person. We're going to all go to Texas together, and we're going to spend 4 days in Texas. So for anybody who might be interested, the trainings, it started off as a year-long coaching program, and really what I'm building is I'm building a family. I've got the family I was born into, and I love them, but I'm also building the family that I am kind of choosing for myself. So you can't buy your way into the Inner Circle. There is a call. We get on a call one-on-one to discuss your needs, what you're looking to do, and make sure I'm a good fit for you and you're a good fit for us. So it's $18,000. It used to be for the year. Now it's $18,000 lifelong mentorship. You get me on your board of advisors. So when you set up your website, you can put me on one of the pages saying, hey, this is my advisor. When you go, if you're looking to raise money, you can say, hey, I work on my team. I've got Mike Wolf, who's been doing this for 31 years. So I'm there to actually help you to get your successes. I'm there to walk you through things. I'm there to help you walk you through the paperwork on the deals, etc. And so are my team. And so if that's something that sounds like a good fit for you and it resonates with you, I'd love to have you. My email address, you can email me directly. It's mike@mikewolfmastery.com. And I'm going to answer all your questions here in a minute. I didn't forget about your questions, by the way. I just wanted to remember to do this. It's mike@mikewolfmastery.com. Send me an email if it's something you want to learn more about, what's all included. We get a bunch of live events. We get to do tax liens, tax deeds, overages in Texas. That's 4 days. We get to do something called multifamily mastery, and we're going to spend 3 days looking at actual live apartment deals, and we're going to teach you how to find them, analyze them, and purchase them using none of your own money if necessary. Oh, spilled my water, sorry. We're all these live events, by the way, I can't put any dates on the calendar because obviously safety is the most important thing. But I'm hoping that, or to answer your question, I'm hoping the next tax deed training, I'm hoping to have it September, October, but I don't want to be overly optimistic. If these auctions, if people start getting COVID at these auctions, they're going to shut it down again. And so I don't want to put any sort of dates on the calendar at this point. But I will say that because it's now a lifelong membership instead of a year-long, whenever it's safe to do it, we're going to do it. There's also something I call Passive Income Academy, and we spend 3 days together in Atlanta, and I teach you how I built my operation where we sold around 1,200 homes there in the last 9 years. I show you how I built that, and yet I don't do very much of the work. That happens while I'm doing the things that I love, while I'm traveling, while I'm volunteering, hanging out with my grandkids. This business is selling homes, and I'm using my money is working for me, but it's not my time. I'm not trading my time for money anymore. So I show you how you can build up a lifestyle where the money's on autopilot, so you don't have to think about it. So we're doing that training. These are all live and in person. They'll also be live streamed because I know some people are not going to feel safe to travel for quite some time, and that's fine. So it'll be live streamed as well, so you can watch it from home. With all my trainings, all my live trainings, you get to re-attend for free a second and third and fourth time if you want. You keep coming back as many times as you like. So anyway, I'm not here to push any of this, but I just wanted to at least put it on your radar if that's something that resonates with you, so that after today you don't think, okay, well, that was great, but what do I do next? I want to be there to hold your hand, give you more training, etc. All right, so let's get to your questions though. When you examine the list and apply filters, what do you concentrate? Future sale, resale, sale, or struck off? Yes, so I always look at the sales because that's the most pressing thing. Sales are basically the active listings that are going to come up on the auction block on that first Tuesday. Future sales basically a property that maybe was supposed to come up on this Tuesday, but then they pushed it into the future. Maybe the person went bankrupt. Bankruptcy will not stop but slow down the process. Resale means that it went up for auction last time and did not sell. And struck off is much the same. There's a few little technicalities which I teach in the training, what makes them different. But the resales can also be good, but usually there's a reason why they didn't sell the first time. So the bad news is if they didn't sell the first time, it's probably wasn't a great deal the last time it went for auction. But what comes back as a resale, they usually cut the price down substantially, and at that point it might make sense. So I usually focus on the sales and the resales, but I would not recommend doing any strategy that involves going to the auction unless you know what you're doing. Unless you've taken a training, it's very, very dangerous. I'll give you an example. There was a very well-publicized story shortly before COVID. This person invested, he went to the auction in, I believe, where was it? Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And he thought he was bidding on this beautiful villa that was worth probably $250,000, let's say. He ended up winning, if you want to call it winning. He got this property for $11,000, only to find out this villa was attached. There were two villas side by side. And what he found out that he, after the auction, after it was too late, is that what he was bidding on wasn't the villa. It was actually the strip of land that separated the two villas between the driveways. And it was a strip of land that's probably a foot wide and 100 feet long. And there's nothing you can do with it. There's no value in that land. Nobody's going to buy it off you. And now he's got to basically pay tax on that because he's now the proud owner of it. And he's got to insure it because if somebody got injured on that land, he'd have liability. And he tried to challenge it. And he tried to contact the county and say, hey, I was misled. When you go to that website that I showed you, and all the websites, there's always a big disclaimer saying you're buying as is, where is. We take no responsibility. If we put the wrong picture, your problem. If we make a mistake in any way, shape, or form, your problem, not our problem. And so he tried to fight it. He is now a proud owner of that land for $11,000. And had he taken training, he would have known. I'll give you a little clue. When you're looking at that list that I gave you, and by the way, it's probably pretty short right now. Like I said, they're putting a very small supply of properties. But when they put the big list of properties, you're going to see all kinds of stuff. You're going to see land. You're going to see single-family homes. You're going to see apartments. You're going to see restaurants. Anything that's got a tax associated with it could end up on the auction block. And when you see if the address says 0, if it says 0 Main Street, that means there's no piece of property. It's just land. And so his property that he bought would have said 0, be such and such an address with the number 0 in front. And he could have absolutely avoided that mistake just by knowing that. But you don't know what you don't know. And so the worst way to learn how to do these auctions is by losing money. So if you don't have any training, which most of you probably don't, I would focus on the pre-foreclosure stuff. Take the list. Don't use it to go to the auction, but use that to try and get a hold of the homeowners that are in trouble. Maybe do a wholesale deal like what I taught you earlier. Wholesaling is very safe because you're putting a home under contract. You're protecting yourself by putting a clause that allows you to get away from that contract. And then you're just finding another buyer for it. So that's very safe. But don't do strategies that you don't know how to do where you're buying as is, where is, and you're putting real live money into the deal that you can't get back. Because if you make a mistake, I've seen people literally lose hundreds of thousands of dollars in a matter of minutes by buying a property at the auction that had, let's say, a lien attached to it that wasn't going to disappear. Normally, when you buy a property at these tax deed auctions, all the mortgages get wiped out. But there's exceptions where they don't. And if you bought one of those homes where that was the exception, you might be thinking you got a smoking deal until the next day you have Bank of America call you up and say, hey, Mike, there's a $250,000 mortgage on this property. How do you plan on paying for it? And the smoking deal just turned into a smoking money pit. And I've literally watched that happen time and time and time again. So make sure that when you're doing a strategy as a beginner, either you have the proper blueprint to do your due diligence on it, or make sure that it's a strategy where it's very low risk. And wholesaling is probably the lowest risk. So I would start with that. Also, the overages is very, very low risk because you're not buying, you're not investing in a property. So keep that in mind. So don't, just because I said, hey, I would go to the sales and the resales, don't do that without knowing what you're doing, or you will lose your shirt. Probably on your first deal, you'll probably lose your shirt. So for my 15-year-old, I love that you're here. Actually, you know what? Email me. I actually want to get on a call with you. I want to talk to you because I think that's really cool that you're here. But my advice would be start looking for whenever you're maybe walking around or with your parents. If you see a property that looks like it might be abandoned or falling apart, jot down the address and just for fun. You're probably better at finding stuff on the internet than I am. See if you can find those owners, and then you can absolutely start doing deals right now if you wanted to. So that's really cool. All right, what other questions do we have here? Oh, you're one of Brian's. Yeah, you're talking Brian. Brian Cassell is one of my students who got he got that $7,200 property. He's actually the reason why I'm still teaching tax deeds. As I mentioned earlier, I've got two grandsons, and they're 3 and 5. When my first grandson, when my daughter got pregnant with Asher, who's the older one, I decided that I was only going to do things that were passive income. I wasn't going to do anything that took up any of my time, because I wanted to be there for my daughter in case there were any complications, and wanted to spend time with my new grandson once he was born. And so I actually stopped doing my tax deed training, because my trainings are what takes my time. The turnkey properties in Atlanta, that's all done by my team. My rental properties are all managed by other people. I don't deal with any of that. My teaching takes my time, and I love teaching. I'm very passionate about it, but I wanted to be there for my daughter. And anyway, I was kind of retired, and suddenly I started getting all these calls from people saying, when's your next tax deed training? When's your next? And I go, what the heck? Where are these people even finding me? I'm not even marketing. And apparently Brian, who is I would say he's pretty famous in the YouTube space and his Facebook page. He teaches realtors, and he teaches mindset. Really good guy. And he's also one of my students. And he ended up buying, I think he ended up buying 4 or 5 properties. But his best deal was that $7,200 home that he got at the auction. And he shot a video saying, hey, I just picked up this property for $7,200. I want to give a big shout out to my mentor, Mike Wolf, for teaching me how to do this. And all of a sudden I started getting all these calls. And so I decided, you know what, I haven't done one in a while. So you know what, I'll do one. I mean, because he sold it out for me without me having to even market it. But you know what, I'll do a training just for fun. And so I did. And that's when I realized how much I missed teaching, how much I love mentoring people. I love watching light bulbs go off in people's heads as they learn new concepts and just see things a little differently than they did before. Like some of you probably came on this call thinking, oh, if you're a real estate investor, you need a lot of money. And I hope I changed your mindset around that. But I love, that stuff lights me up. And so anyway, so I decided to do one more because of Brian. And now to this day, I'm still doing them because I forgot how much I loved teaching them. So yeah, that's great that you follow Brian and saw that. Where is your TED Talk? So here's the funny thing is I did my TED Talk and in Las Vegas, and there were 25 or 26 of us that did it that day. There was no live audience. It was just all the speakers being the audience for the other speakers. And they decided that some of them were, like in the case of mine, they decided it was too corporate. So I just found out, because I did talk a lot about I did talk about happiness and fulfillment, but obviously the key to getting there to financial freedom is real estate. And they felt that I talked too much about real estate in there. And they thought it was too promotional, even though I wasn't selling anything. I didn't mention any of my courses. Anyway, I didn't publish the video for that reason. There were like 7 or 8 that they didn't publish. And so I'm actually going to redo it, not for TED. I'm actually going to do it and post it because I think it's very important. I think it's really important to talk about happiness, fulfillment, freedom. I think that's the most, especially right now after going through a pandemic, and so many people having a lot of their freedom taken away from them, and a lot of people struggling. I personally am fortunate. I don't know a single person personally that has died from COVID. I do know several people that have taken their own lives since COVID started. And to me, it's very unfortunate that so many people are, we're all going through some really tough times. And so I think it was a very important message. I think they felt that it was too promotional, even though I didn't feel it was. So I'm going to create my own video. Won't have the TED letters behind it, but I'm going to create my own video because I think it's a super important topic. So it's not actually published anywhere, but as soon as I actually do my new version of it, it will be. And I won't be restricted to 18 minutes, which is going to be even better because there's so many things I wanted to say in there. And to me, the TED Talk wasn't about me. I wasn't even looking to do a TED Talk. I never even applied. It just fell into my lap. And I feel very grateful and honored that it did. But to me, I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it because that one person needs to hear that message on that day. It might change their life. And so I am still going to do it and put that out there. It'll be even more detailed, and I can't wait. And I'll let you know once I've got it out there. And of course, I will be able to control the marketing and publishing, and so it will definitely happen sooner than later. All right. So when will I do my next tax deed? We covered that. What if you're older than dirt, Phil? What if you're older than dirt? You're talking about me. You're not older than dirt. That's a crazy. You're never too old to do this. You're never too old to change your financial future. I know you're a very successful business coach, but I don't think you're ever too young and you're ever too old. It's all about mindset. Age is a number. I'm 55, and I honestly feel like I have better energy now than when I was 35 and 25, and I'm a heck of a lot smarter. So I think you're a perfect candidate because I know you're a very smart guy. But yeah, it's like you can be any age. The one thing I'd suggest, though, especially as you get older, you want to be less and less and less hands-on. So now, once again, work smarter. You can still create these revenue streams. You don't have to be sitting there on the phone all day calling up people. You absolutely hire that out. You don't have to be sending out those flyers saying, I can help you stay in your home. That's other people. I can tell you, I work a lot less now than I've ever worked in I shouldn't say that. COVID is kind of put more on my plate than normal. But in general, I work a lot less than I ever used to. I used to be very transactional, meaning I'd go find the home, I'd get it fixed, I'd flip it, and then I'd do the next deal and do the next deal. Now that I've got teams, like I said, we've sold 1,100 and some odd homes in Atlanta in 9 years. There's no way that on my own, working hard, and we're taught to work hard, working hard, I would have sold a small fraction of that. There's no way I could have done that sort of, volume on my own. And so that's why doing the stuff that we're taught, working hard, to me, that's a trap. To me, working smart makes everything you do so much more scalable. Like think about Steve Jobs, Apple. I'm a very big Apple product consumer. I have like everything that they've ever made probably. And imagine if Steve Jobs would have said, oh, well, I've got to work hard, so I'm going to stay in my garage all day and I'm going to build like one computer every 2 weeks. He would have never sold any computers. He would have never sold all his other products. Imagine if he said, he would have never had stores. So if you work smart, I don't care if you're 90, if you work smart, you can be more effective than ever and help a lot. You can help more people, make more money, and totally protect your time. And so age is definitely not a factor. And that's why a 15-year-old, I think that is so brilliant that you're taking time to learn. So yes, you can email me once again, Mike at Mike Wolf Mastery, if you want to learn about my tax deed class. Once again, there's no specific date on the calendar. I would love to do September, October in the perfect world, but I won't do it unless it's safe. But yes, absolutely. Email me, Mike at Mike Wolf Mastery, and I'll put you on the list and I'll give you all the details. All right. So any questions for me? I appreciate all your great questions and you staying with me for now 2 hours. We're still going, but I want to make sure I cover any questions you might have, or if there's any advice, if you're stuck with something, if you're having trouble with your own home, whatever it is, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and just let me know what they are. You guys are quiet, or maybe I'm not seeing all the comments. So if I didn't get your question answered because I didn't see it for some reason, email me and I'll make sure every single question is answered, no matter what. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you all again for being here, and I appreciate you hanging out with me on a Saturday. I plan on doing these especially as the market starts to shift, as I see new opportunities coming up. I'm happy to put on some afternoon or morning trainings here, just like we did today on Facebook and all the other channels that my team has me signed up for. But if you have any questions about anything to do with real estate, finance, whatever it is, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to help you as best I can. So have an awesome weekend, everybody. Stay safe, enjoy yourself, and it's been a pleasure hanging out with you today. We'll see you all soon. Take care, everybody.